Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about the average workday for a programmer here in Sweden. So let's get into it. Basically the question in question today was how long is the average workday for a programmer in Sweden, Frederick? And I'm going to tell you the average workday is 8 hours because that is legally how long you can be forced to work, apart from special circumstances such as overtimes and stuff like that. But that's like the basic idea. Now, the reason why I think I got this question is because that might sound either just kind of straight right on the money for quite a few of you, and it can also sound like, oh, that sounds nice. Because there is this. I don't really know why this is, but there is this idea that some programmers and some people who do programming, that's all they want. All they really live for is to be able to work day in and day out, and ideally and the best part is that they usually do it just because they're really interested in it. And that's why you want to recruit these people. You want to recruit the really passionate programmers, because then you can run your company in a really shitty manner where you're constantly behind schedule and you constantly completely fuck up the whole development process to the point where all your programmers needs to basically work almost systematically overtime in order to achieve whatever goals that they have set for themselves. And this does happen even here in tiny little Sweden, I'm sorry to say. And there is there is a tendency that this happens in the smaller companies usually, but it does happen in the larger companies as well. So the person who asked this question had kind of this exact sort of situation, like where there is a systematic thing where he's basically constantly asked to work overtime. And I will just tell you guys the same thing I told him. If that is the case, then you have to evaluate whether or not this place of work is worth it to you. Because it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon that you find yourself in a situation like this, but it is up to you to determine whether or not that place of work is going to compensate you in some other fashion. Now, his specific example was a bit of a horror. Almost to the point where I thought that it sounded like pure exploitation, because basically the most common way that you get compensated for overtime in programming is that you get flex time. Like you work a few more hours this day, then you can take them another day and like stuff like that. But in his specific scenario, they had done a really vicious thing, which was basically to force you to request that flex time. In other words, you can't just kind of drop in whenever you want during the workday, which is actually also very common, that you can work flexible hours, right? But in this case, you needed to request it. And I think I'm not going to say too much here, but because I haven't worked at his specific company. But that does sound like a coldly calculated, vicious management strategy to make sure that nobody ever does actually do this, because they're always going to be in the winning position. It's sort of like going to a casino. Guys, it's all rigged. All of it. The house always wins. The same thing is here. The same thing goes here. The idea that you're going to have to request to get that flex time means that there's more overhead process. It also means that they can tell you pretty much whenever they want no, because they are in the you can't just take the time, because that's gonna put them in a situation where they're gonna, well, I'm guessing, punish you in some fashion or report you, or I don't know what they're going to do. But they're not going to be happy about it. So by just forcing you with that extra bit of resistance, they almost all but guarantee that you almost never take this flex time out. And what's even nicer is that this is untracked time, which means that since they have this idea, it's kind of like not getting a receipt. You don't really have a way of claiming that you should have this time, such as you have when, in our case, we have vacation days and stuff like that. So the same thing applies here in in Sweden, where like technically legally they can't ask you to work more than 8 hours, but they're going to in some situations because you need to, sometimes it's necessary, right? But I mean, my attitude towards this is that sometimes you have to do it because you need to look out for the good of the company, because after all, I mean, the company does actually pay your salary, and hopefully you do actually like some people in that company, so you can take one for the team, if you will. But I will just tell you that you really ask yourself if you want to work in a company where this is a systematic thing, because basically what's happening is that you are working for less. You can it's to work overtime consistently is the same thing as being paid less, unless you're getting that compensation in some fashion. Because let's remember this, and this goes for the managers as well. Programmers, we may like our job and we may like coding, but you see, we're not in the company because it's fun. We're there because you pay us. If you don't pay them, like your programmers, trust me, they will be out the door fairly immediately. So there is a priority. Let's not pretend that it's all about the craft. Hopefully it should be, but the priority is usually physical needs such as money, resources, etc., etc., and then all the passion and the other stuff that might be hopefully quite a lot of us feel for the stuff that we were doing. So what I want you to take away from this is that here in my little country, it's 8 hours, and it should be fairly standard quite across the board. Maybe it's different in your region, but I really urge you to reevaluate if you're forced to work overtime consistently, because if that is the case, then you're literally accepting a life situation where you get paid less to do what you've agreed on. Because remember, if you're getting paid for 8 hours, but you're forced to consistently work 10 or 12 or something like that, all you're actually doing is that you're doing more work for less pay. And if you're not getting that back in some form of compensation, at least I believe so, and have said so to every manager I've ever had, then I don't feel like this company's respecting me all that much. Then you compensate me in a really tangible way, or I'm out the door. Have a great day.